Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Pagan's Witchy Corner. My name is Pagan, and today I am joined by a really awesome author, and that is Astrea Taylor. Astrea, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here, Pagan.
Astrea is the author of some amazing titles. Her latest work she co-authored with Jason Mankey, Modern Witchcraft with the Greek Gods. She also wrote Air Magic, which is part of the Elements of Witchcraft series, and Intuitive Witchcraft. You also have another book that's coming out later this year, which I am super excited to chat about later. But this book, everybody, was so good, especially if you were interested in the Greek gods. This book was incredible. Absolutely incredible. And you guys know I love Jason Mankey's work and all of that. And this is the first time I've gotten to read anything from you, Estrella, but it was so good. Oh,
Thank you so
it
much.
was such a great book. So, right off the bat, and obviously you have worked with Jason. So, what inspired you guys to come together to write this book?
Well, basically, we just kind of felt like there wasn't a really good book out there for pagans by pagans with the Greek gods, like all of the Olympians, and then some of the more important other deities as well. Um, and they didn't really have a lot of magical practices. We just couldn't find a book like that. We both wanted to read that book. So we were like, we could write it together and split the work. So it just worked out that way really well.
I think it was such a great balance the way you guys split it up. And it was really fun to kind of see who wrote what with each chapter. And, seeing this chapter is by Jason, this chapter is by you. And it was just really well balanced and really well done. And the fun thing about it is I love how much information you guys tried to include on as many of the Greek deities and their Roman counterparts as well throughout the entire book. Like, you guys tried to jam pack everything that you could in this book without it becoming a massive textbook at the same time. It was just really, really well done.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, we just really love the history and the culture. And I feel like it's really important to absorb that and to learn as much as we can about that stuff. And so we really tried to do a really good job. And I think that like 99% of it was just really easy for us to write and easy for us to research too. And there's always that little sticking point where you're like, okay, this and that. But yeah, it was just really fun, a really fun project to do. And I really love the results too. One of my favorite parts is that we got about 22 passages from different authors about the gods. And
Mhm.
it was amazing to hear their unique perspectives and their personal gnosis as well. And I just really love the modern takes on the ancient Greek gods. It's so refreshing to put them in the modern perspective and see how people are working with them these days.
It's always a fun experience to read a book and see somebody's personal gnosis and also see how personal gnosis lines up with yours. And
Mhm.
now the only Greek deity that I work with is Hecate. I don't work with any of the others, but I have a, I guess you could say, a respect for all of them. I enjoy their mythologies. I enjoy what they're about. And I would say that if I was to work with anybody else, it'd probably be Persephone and Hades. But beyond that, it was really exciting to see all those different personal stories and how, the gods came into all these different individuals' lives and how they affect their lives, which was such an exciting thing because, as a magical practitioner, a lot of times we'll have our own personal experiences, and society likes to tell us those didn't happen ever.
Mhm.
They like to say, "Hey, no, you're not having a magical experience. You're having some sort of psychosis or some kind of thing that's just not real. We don't believe in that in society." So, to have those magical experiences and read them from other people and other practitioners and be like, "Hey, I had something similar like this happen with this deity or the deity that they're
Mhm.
referring to." And
Yeah.
just to have those experiences is so cool to see all that backed up. So it was really neat to see that you guys included so many different individuals' experiences.
Yeah, and, paganism isn't for the weak of heart. It's,
No.
for people. And, it's funny because a lot of people are like, "Well, where's the proof you had this experience?" And I'm like, "I got goosebumps," like, I felt something, I saw something, I heard something, this and that. And these are tangible experiences for me that I can't replicate for someone else. I'm a scientist. I know how this works. It's someone's like, do it again, and you're like, I can't necessarily do it for me. Maybe you won't feel anything. But, that's where our faith comes into play. And I think that that's magical too. And the interactions that we have with the deities are so beautiful. They're just so transcendent. And I really believe that they are here to help us with things. And they've been around for long, long time, and their importance hasn't diminished. They're still around and they're still important.
I think that that's a really great way to put that. And, one of the other things I really enjoyed is I was reading the book as you guys were talking about the different myths and how humanity has written these myths. And some of the myths of the Greek gods are very disturbing, especially with
Yeah.
Zeus. Zeus was not
Yes.
always a good dude. But the interesting thing that you guys had put in there about these myths, that these myths were written by humans, and humans sometimes will write stories to fit an agenda. And
Hmm.
so it was interesting to kind of that you guys put in there that yes, these are terrible stories in a lot of ways. Zeus's stories, some of his are not great. The story of Persephone and Hades is not great. The story of Medusa, again, not great. But all of these different myths were written by humanity, and humanity has a lot of flaws. And
Yeah.
so I like that you guys really put that in there, and it's like we can't verify that this is what actually happened, but this is the story. So
Yeah.
I
And we
love
have some
that.
modern perspective too. I think that some of the thoughts, the original thoughts about some of these myths were maybe not as violent as we interpret them today, or
Mhm.
perhaps not as troublesome. For instance, like Zeus chasing Demeter. Yes, that is a whole story. But if you think about it, the storm clouds, um, you know, chase the animals and
Mhm.
the fertilization of Zeus to Demeter. The rain that falls is actually fertile, and it fertilizes the land.
Mhm.
So, in a way, like there are ways to look at things that aren't necessarily as conquestial as if that's a word, as has been promoted. And sometimes they were just stories about conquest, like Zeus. The Greeks, uh, a certain city took over another city, and they brought
Mhm.
Zeus with them, and he replaced the god and um, conquered the goddess, or married the goddess, or just took the goddess, or however that story played out was the people who made that decision. So some of the myths were generated by the humans over the ages, and some of them are just retold again and again, especially in a non-literate era. So you have this evolution that we have no idea about how things started. We have some ideas, but we don't have the knowledge about exactly how things were. So it's pretty fascinating though to look back at things. And we tried to do a good job to look at the history, look at things within an ancient Greek context, and then bring it forward into the modern age, and interpret it that way too. And this is not to condone any of those terrible acts either. I really
Mhm.
don't want that to come across at all. But yeah, we just have to look at things in a lot of different ways and try to understand what the original intention is, and maybe what we can take away from it.
I think that's really well said. And yes, no way, shape, or form are we saying that what those original myths and the way that they are portrayed is okay by societal standards. But at the same time, yes, we also have to look back at the historical context too.
Hmm.
What happened during that time period may be completely different to where the way it is now. So, kind of thinking back to that is really one of those things where if you're looking at a myth, you have to look at it also for the time period that it was written.
Hmm.
Um, because otherwise it's going to be like, oh, well, by our societal standards, that's a big no-no. We don't do that now. We don't do that now. But
Hmm.
humanity back then, maybe that was norm. I don't know. If it was, I'm not really okay with that, but, either way, it was one of those things that that was the time period that it was written in. But I did like that the personal gnosis with everyone showed the modern evolution of all these gods and how they fit into a modern version of witchcraft, which obviously is what the book is all about. So,
Mhm.
it's really cool to also see how the old gods evolve with humanity and how we can fit them into a society that is all technology and, not so nature based. I mean, obviously, we try to be as nature based as we can, but at the same time, we live in a modern society that is very tech and chrome. And so seeing how the gods are like, yeah, I can fit in, and be like, okay, so you can't get out there and, have a day with Dionysus and go party and do all that fun stuff that they used to do back then. But now you can be like, okay, cool. So we're gonna, sit here and Dionysus maybe likes Game of Thrones. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, theater for sure. And it sounds like some of his events were, like, camping events too, or
Yeah.
that's, like, a good getaway, but, we hear a lot of stories about how in the old days, a lot of times, some people were just relegated to the home because of plagues and because of travelers that, may or may not be the greatest people. um, so, I mean, some people were stuck in their homes, like we were during the pandemic and like some of us are now.
Mhm.
So, I think we don't always hear the stories of those people though. Like Hestia, I think must have been really important for them. The hearth fire.
I love out of all the deities that I've recently learned about, Hestia was one of the ones that I didn't actually know a whole lot about until I had actually read another book that was talking about Frigg and how Frigg
Mm-hmm.
and Hestia were very much almost on the same kind of wavelengths with a lot of their mythologies and the way that they're both deities of the home and respected that way and the hearth and learning about Hestia as well. And I'm just like, I kind of feel like if I was going to work with, a home deity, Hestia would
Mm-hmm.
be my jam. I think we'd get along great because I am an avid homemaker. I very much love it, baking and doing all this. And she would probably have a good time hanging out with me in my kitchen. So,
Yeah.
it's really cool learning about those kind of deities.
And, we got a passage from Rachel Henderson who wrote a whole book about Hestia, so I would recommend that too.
I have that written down in my notes. A lot of times when I go through a book, I will be like, "Oh, hey, there's this note about this book, or there's, this in the appendix." And it's like, I would like to learn more about this. Where do I start? Appendixes are
Mhm.
great in witchcraft books because they're full of all those books that you want to learn more about and the resources for you to just go hunt it down and you get to go on a nice little hyper focus adventure.
Oh, yeah, I love those. I call them rabbit holes.
Yes, rabbit holes. We love rabbit holes around here because
Mhm.
I go on a lot of those.
And they're fun.
They are fun. They are very, very fun. And so, my question for you, and you don't have to pick just one, you can pick a top three if you'd like. Which was your favorite deity to learn about slash write about in this book?
Well, I would have to say, the top would be the Eleusinian mysteries because they're mysteries, and what's really funny is I think I read, like, at least 40 different sources to write the chapter about Demeter, which has most of the Eleusinian mysteries in it. Has some Persephone chapter has some too, but I just really wanted to get to the bottom of this, and I would read one book and say, "But what happened?" And like, what was that? And what I found is that different books had different bits of information, and they didn't seem to be compiled in one great place. So I definitely wanted to incorporate all of that I could into one place. So I would say Demeter first. Um, I loved researching about Athena second because I'm really close to her. She's helped me with a lot of my writing,
Mhm.
and she helped me with graduate school too, which was a trip. And any creativity or anything that involves the mind or craft at all, she's there for you. And just knowing her celebrations and how important she was to the people in Athens and still is today to many people in Athens, that was fascinating. And then Dionysus too, I'd say is my number three because I've experienced him and I've seen him in the woods, like dancing off by the side. And um, just knowing more of his myth was fascinating. And I love all the different aspects of him too. And just to learn more about him as opposed to just experiencing him it was just really epic.
I love that. And I love Dionysus too. Dionysus, I work with Loki. I'm a priestess of
Mm.
Loki.
Hmm.
And so it's interesting when you read about other kind of chaos and what I call the fun deities.
Yeah.
Dionysus fits in that same box, and he is one of those ones where I have not personally had a lot of work with him. I've done some work, but not, on a full like patron level. So I haven't
Hmm.
actually done that with him. But he is one of those ones that I could totally imagine in the ethereal realms of the gods where him and Loki are probably sitting there having a good time telling stories to each other about their antics. And I'm like, can
Right.
I just be a fly on the wall and listen? That's all I
And
want.
yeah, and if Hermes was there too,
Oh
that
my
would be,
gosh,
like,
yes.
amazing. I would love that.
That would be so amazing. There's so many
Yes.
great deities to choose from. And there's so many. Like when you think about the Greek
Mhm.
deities, you got like your top 12 or so. But there's so many. Like you guys have a whole section on other different deities and, basically spirits and all that are in there. And just sections, like, you guys didn't even give them full chapters, you just wrote out their names and kind of who they were because I don't think you guys could fit all of them in, and so you had to do it that way, and I was like, "Wow."
Mhm.
It's so amazing to think about how many different things and all the different stories and all the different myths and the you know, the way that everybody plays with each other and interchanges with each other and who belongs to who, and, oh, it's so cool to just read. A little confusing if you've never read the Greek myths. It is a little hard in the beginning to keep up with, be like, "Who's related to who?" Don't even bother trying. I'm gonna give you that piece of advice right now. Don't bother trying to, like, do a familial tree because it's gonna look like one of those, like, cross webs where everything
Mhm.
is overlapping. Just don't even
Yeah.
bother. Just kind of put it in an umbrella thing of everybody's related, and we'll leave it at that.
Yes. Yeah, that's perfect.
Um, so in that regard, um, what we've talked about who was your favorite deity. Now, do you have
Mhm.
a favorite spell from the book that you got to work on or that is just in the book? Maybe you worked on it with Jason or without, either one.
Yeah, I would say the Aphrodite love oil. Um, all of the Aphrodite spells are wonderful. I test out everything before I publish it, and I edit it and like, okay, some of this, some of that. But that love oil, oh my gosh, I've had so much success with that. It's an attraction oil too.
Mhm.
So it's just it's so sensual. It has basically I tried to recreate the oils that were found at an archaeological dig site at Cyprus, where Aphrodite is thought to be from, or Aphrodite, as the
Mhm.
Greeks would say. And so, yeah, I combined some of that and I encourage people to use olive oil because that's what they used back then. And this oil is so sumptuous. Like every time I put it on, it just feels like things like click into place. Like I'm afraid to use it too often because I don't want my luck to run out. But no, it's more like special time, special place, special mindset, but it's really good for magical practices and it just really boosts the energy up higher.
I absolutely love that. And there's so many great spells and creations within this book that it would be a difficult one, at least for me to choose because there's so many. But
Yeah,
there's
thank
so
you.
many good ones. So that being said, now that we've talked about all of that, what other books you've got a book coming out in June, and like I said at the beginning of the episode, I think you have one other book already out, but I could be totally wrong, and please correct me if I am, but if you
Yeah.
do, let's talk a little bit about your other works and your work that's coming out later this year.
Sure. I published Intuitive Witchcraft in
That's the one.
2020.
Yeah, I knew there was one.
Yes.
I was like, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and, I wrote that for, people who are eclectic, who wanna follow their intuition in their magical practices and use basically their intuition for everything. And I have a lot of guides and tables and things like that. I bring up the concept of personal correspondences, which, you bring up your own energy and you communicate with this uh, you know, plant or herb or color or crystal or whatever, and you kind of figure out like, well, how do I feel about it? The book says this. Do I agree with it? um, my second book with Llewellyn was Air Magic. It was part of the Elemental series that
Hmm.
came out recently. So this is my third book with Llewellyn, and my fourth one is actually coming out in July of 2023, and it's called Inspiring Creativity Through Magic, and it's about creating a ritual for your creative life, for your artistic life, and using creative spirit kind of as a familiar, and also working with the egregore of your art and so on. And there's a lot of examples of people who are writers and other pagans and witches and ceremonial magicians and whatnot. So I try to bring in a lot of that lore into one place.
I think that's gonna be an amazing book. The other 2 books
Thank you.
are, I have part of the Elemental series. That's the only one I actually don't have is the Air one, so I need to get a copy of that one as well. But all of those sound absolutely amazing. Obviously, the, Modern Witchcraft for the Greek gods or with the Greek gods is incredible, and I am so excited for the creative one, especially when you start talking about, like, the egregore of your creativity, and I'm sitting here
Mhm.
looking at like my little egregore on my desk that I have infused with a lot of energy. And it is a skeletal raven, which is a Halloween prop that I bought for $5 at a Halloween store. But either way, his name is Edgar and he is my painting
Oh,
buddy. He helps me
yes.
with all of my artwork that I create and also helps keep me on task when the ADHD starts to kick in and makes me wander off in my brain.
Yeah, I have ADHD too, and this book is basically how to hyper focus.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's going to be such a
Using
great
a
book.
ritual, yeah.
I love
Thank you.
it. I'm so
Yeah.
excited for that book. And that comes out in July, correct?
Yeah, it does, yep, I'm really
Awesome.
excited about it too. I'm editing the last parts of it right now, so it's good to talk about.
I am very excited about it. Everybody stay tuned for that book. There will be lots more information about it. You know, I will supply you all with links and all that good stuff. So
Thank
just
you, yeah.
stay tuned to all of that. Now, do you have any classes, workshops, or anything that's coming up that you would like to talk about and promote?
I have a busy schedule this year. I'm going to Paganicon, Spring Mysteries, the Witch City Tarot Gathering, Starwood, and I don't even know what's after that. So we'll see.
Okay.
But yeah, I would love to see people at events. I'm gonna have some book signings. Oh, the International New Age Trade Show in June too. So yeah, it's gonna be a great time this year. I think things are finally opening up more. People are more, healthier with the COVID and things like that, however, whatever that means to them. And it's just easier to do things now. Things aren't
Mhm.
getting canceled as often and people aren't getting as sick, knocking on wood for everyone. But yeah, it's the time to just gather, I think, in my opinion, and hang out, share resources, share a joke, share stories. And that's what I'm looking forward to this year in 2023.
I love that. And everybody who's listening, I will try to get you guys dates and links to as many of those as you possibly can. So if you're in those areas, you can definitely go hang out with Astrea and meet her and get your book signed and get your tarot read and get all that cool stuff done.
Mhm.
So, um, Astrea, this has been amazing. I absolutely love that you got to come on the show and then we got to chat, and it's been so much fun. I hope that you will come back anytime you'd like. My schedule is always open to those who want to come back. So, whenever you want to just chit chat about whatever, you're welcome.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much, Pagan.
Well, everybody, y'all stay safe, take care of yourselves, and I will see you all next week. Bye bye.